Ambassador Sarachin stood before the towering crystalline spires of the Galactic Council chamber, her hands clenched behind her back as she watched the assembled representatives through the observation deck's reinforced glass. Below, dozens of alien species occupied their assigned sections. The graceful Altarians with their luminescent skin, the hulking Corvani delegates wrapped in ceremonial armor, the ethereal Zephyrite floating in their containment fields. Each species commanded respect, held full voting rights, and enjoyed protection of the galaxy's most powerful alliance. Humanity held none of these privileges. "They're ready for you, Ambassador," came the synthesized voice of her aide, a diplomatic AI assigned by the Council to monitor human activities. Sarah nodded, straightening her formal jacket. Standard Council blue, not the deep red of humanity's independent colonies. Even their clothing served as a reminder of their subordinate status. The chamber doors hissed open with a sound like escaping breath. Sarah walked down the long approach toward the speaker's podium, her footsteps echoing in the vast space designed to make petitioners feel small. The assembled delegates watched her with expressions ranging from indifference to barely concealed contempt. 300 years of service, and humanity remained the galaxy's hired muscle. Too useful to discard, too dangerous to fully embrace. Council Prime Velethan, a towering Altarian whose skin pulsed with authority patterns, gestured for silence. Ambassador Chin of the human colonial territories, his translated voice boomed through the chamber's audio system. "You appear before this council to receive new operational parameters." Sarah's jaw tightened. Not a request, not even an order. Parameters, like humanity was a piece of equipment to be programmed. The Council recognizes humanity's contributions to galactic stability, Velethan continued, his skin shifting to cooler tones that conveyed diplomatic necessity rather than gratitude. "Your species' unique aptitude for conflict resolution has proven valuable in maintaining peace among our member civilizations." Conflict resolution. Sarah almost laughed at the euphemism. What they meant was humanity's talent for warfare, their ability to think like predators, to anticipate enemy movements, to find weaknesses where other species saw only strength. The Council had discovered this talent during humanity's first contact, when human military strategists had solved a centuries-old territorial dispute in the Vega system within 6 months. What had taken the Council's best minds decades to attempt, human generals had resolved with surgical precision and minimal casualties. That success had sealed humanity's fate, not as equals, but as tools. However, Velethan's skin darkened to warning patterns. Recent intelligence indicates a significant threat to galactic stability. The Devourers have awakened. A ripple of fear passed through the chamber. Sarah felt her own blood chill. The Devourers were legend, an ancient machine intelligence that had consumed entire star systems before mysteriously vanishing 2 millennia ago. If they had truly returned. "Our xenoarchaeologists believe the Devourers will emerge from the Void Nebula within standard years," continued Gorthak, the Corvani military representative. His massive frame shifted forward aggressively. "Preliminary projections indicate their path will intersect with 17 inhabited systems." Sarah's enhanced memory banks immediately called up the star charts. Her heart sank as she recognized the systems. 3 of them contained major human colonies, New Terra, Haven's Rest, and the mining world of Prometheus. Millions of human lives. "The Council has determined the most effective strategy for containing this threat," Velethan announced. "Selected worlds along the projected path will be evacuated and prepared as sacrifice zones. Systems we will allow the Devourers to consume while we strengthen our defenses around core Council worlds." Sacrifice zones? Sarah's voice cut through the chamber before she could stop herself. "You're talking about abandoning entire civilizations." "We are talking about preserving galactic civilization," snapped Nethes, the insectoid representative from the hive worlds. Her mandibles clicked with irritation. "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Surely even humans understand basic mathematics." Sarah stepped closer to the podium, her diplomatic training warring with rising fury. "And which worlds have you selected for this sacrifice?" The pause that followed told her everything. Velethan's skin patterns shifted to what Sarah recognized as reluctant disclosure. The human colonies of New Terra, Haven's Rest, and Prometheus have been designated as sacrifice zones. Additionally, several mining outposts and research stations will be abandoned. The chamber erupted, not in outrage at the decision, but in discussion of logistics. Sarah heard fragments of conversation: evacuation timelines, resource allocation, defensive preparations. They were discussing the abandonment of human worlds like a weather report. "You can't be serious." Sarah's voice rose above the chatter. "Those are civilian populations. New Terra alone has 40 million inhabitants. You're asking us to abandon our people." "We are not asking," Gordhack rumbled. "The decision has been made. Humanity will coordinate the evacuations and establish the sacrifice perimeters. Your species' military expertise makes you uniquely qualified for this operation." Sarah stared at the assembled delegates, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time. Not allies, not even reluctant partners. They were users, parasites who had spent 3 centuries taking humanity's blood and sweat while giving nothing in return. And now they wanted humanity to sacrifice their own children for the safety of those who had never accepted them as equals. "And if we refuse?" Sarah asked quietly. The chamber fell silent. Velethan's skin cycled through several rapid patterns: surprise, calculation, and finally cold authority. Refusal is not an option. The security of the galaxy supersedes the concerns of any single species. Humanity will comply or face immediate expulsion from council protection and trade networks. Sarah nodded slowly, her mind racing through the implications. Expelled from the council meant economic isolation, technological embargo, and military vulnerability. It meant facing the devourers alone while the rest of the galaxy watched from behind their fortified borders. But as she looked at the faces around her, faces that showed no sympathy, no recognition of what they were demanding, Sarah realized something else. Humanity had always faced its challenges alone. The Council had taken their service, but never offered true partnership. They had used human blood to solve their problems while keeping humans at arm's length, too afraid of their own hired killers to grant them real power. "I need to consult with my government," Sarah said finally. "You have 72 standard hours," Velethan replied. "The evacuation timeline cannot be delayed." Sarah turned and walked toward the chamber exit, her mind already composing the message she would send to Earth. The Council thought they held all the cards, that humanity had no choice but to comply. They were about to learn how badly they had miscalculated. The emergency session of the United Earth Assembly convened 18 hours after Sarah's transmission reached Sol System. In the secure conference chamber beneath Geneva, holographic representatives from every human colony flickered into existence around the ancient oak table, a deliberate symbol of Earth's natural heritage that had survived wars, plagues, and a long journey to the stars. President Maria Santos called the session to order, her weathered face showing the strain of 3 decades in office. "The Council's ultimatum is clear," she began, her voice carrying across the quantum-encrypted channels to humanity's far-flung worlds. "Abandon our colonies or face expulsion from galactic civilization." "It's not an ultimatum," growled General Harrison Webb from his command post on Mars. "It's extortion. They're holding a gun to our heads and calling it diplomacy." Governor Chin Lu of New Terra leaned forward, his hologram crackling with transmission lag from the colony's distant location. 40 million people, Madam President. 40 million souls who built their lives on the promise that humanity would protect them. How do we look them in the eye and tell them they're expendable? "The same way the Council looked at our ambassador," replied Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's chief xenobiologist, with cold calculation. "They've never seen us as anything more than useful animals." Admiral Keiko Tanaka, commanding the Earth Defense Fleet, pulled up tactical displays that painted the chamber in blue light. "I've run the numbers. Even if we evacuate successfully, we lose 30% of our industrial capacity, 20% of our population, and our most valuable mining operations. The economic impact alone would cripple us for generations. And if we refuse," asked Governor Jennifer Brooks from Haven's Rest, her voice tight with barely controlled fear. "Economic embargo, technological sanctions, military isolation," President Santos replied. "They'll cut us off from galactic trade networks, revoke access to Council technologies, and withdraw protection treaties. When the devourers come, we face them alone." Silence fell over the assembly. Every human world had been built with Council technology, powered by Council energy systems, defended by weapons designed with Council materials. Cut off from that lifeline, humanity would be thrown back centuries in technological development. There's something else, Sarah's voice cut through the quiet. Her transmission from the Council station carried additional weight after witnessing the aliens' casual dismissal of human life. I've been analyzing Council records for 3 centuries. Every major threat they faced, every crisis that required military intervention, they've used us. The Vrex Rebellion, the Andromedan Border Wars, the Siege of Centauri Prime. Human blood, human sacrifice, human victory. And what have we gained? Peace, said Governor Liu quietly. Prosperity. Membership in galactic civilization. Conditional membership, Sarah corrected. Probationary status. We're guard dogs, chun. Well-fed, well-trained guard dogs, but dogs nonetheless. The moment we're no longer useful. They'll put us down. General Webb's expression hardened. Then we make ourselves too dangerous to put down. President Santos raised her hand for silence. Before we discuss drastic measures, let's consider alternatives. Dr. Vasquez, what do we know about the Devourers? The scientist's hologram shifted, calling up ancient xenoarchaeological data, their machine intelligences, possibly von Neumann probes that achieved consciousness. 2,000 years ago, they consumed the equivalent of 23 solar systems before vanishing into the void nebula. The Council's predecessors tried everything: diplomacy, bribery, military force. Nothing worked. The Devourers simply consumed everything in their path and moved on. Their technology? Exponentially superior to current galactic standards. They convert matter directly into more themselves. Ships, weapons, computational matrices. They're not just an invasion force. They're a transforming wave that turns everything they touch into extensions of their collective will. Admiral Tanaka studied the data streams flowing across her displays. What stopped them before? Nobody knows. The records from that era are incomplete. The Devourers just left, vanished into deep space as suddenly as they appeared. The Council's xenoarchaeologists believe they were recalled by some higher imperative, but that's speculation. Convenient timing, though, General Webb muttered. Right when the galaxy was about to fall, the monsters just decided to take a vacation. President Santos turned to her military advisors. Assuming we refuse the Council's demand, what are our chances against the Devourers? Unknown, Admiral Tanaka replied honestly. Our weapons are designed for fighting biological species, not self-replicating machine intelligences. We'd be improvising tactics against an enemy that's already proven capable of defeating the combined might of galactic civilization. But, General Webb interjected, we'd be fighting to protect our own, not to preserve alien worlds that see us as expendable. That's a significant tactical advantage. History shows that humans fight harder when our backs are against the wall. Governor Brooks laughed bitterly. You're talking about war against machines that eat planets. This isn't some colonial uprising we can outfight with superior strategy. Maybe not, said Colonel Marcus Reynolds, humanity's chief military strategist. His hologram appeared younger than his 50 years, a benefit of military enhancement programs. But the Council made a critical error in their calculations. They assumed the Devourers will behave exactly as they did 2 millennia ago, consume the sacrifice worlds and move on. But what if we don't give them empty systems to devour? Explain, President Santos ordered. Reynolds activated a tactical display showing the projected Devourer path. The Council wants us to evacuate our colonies and abandon them to the machines. But what if instead we turn those worlds into traps? Fortified positions loaded with experimental weapons, AI, viruses, quantum bombs, everything we developed but never been allowed to deploy because it violates Council weapons treaties. Dr. Vasquez looked intrigued despite herself. The Council banned those technologies because they're too dangerous, too unpredictable. Exactly. The Devourers have experienced fighting conventional galactic militaries. They've never faced weapons designed by a species the Council considers too violent to fully trust. Our excessive aggression might be exactly what's needed. It's suicide, Governor Liu protested. You're talking about turning our colonies into battlegrounds. They're already battlegrounds, Sarah said from her distant station. The council has declared them sacrifice zones. The only question is whether our people die as lambs or as wolves. President Santos stood, her decision crystallizing after decades of political experience. The room fell silent as every representative waited for humanity's leader to speak. Contact our colony worlds, she said finally. Not the governors, not the officials, the people themselves. Tell them what the council has demanded. Tell them the choice we face. Let them decide whether they want to evacuate or fight. Madam President, Admiral Tanaka said carefully, if even one colony chooses to resist, we'll be in open defiance of the council. There's no going back from that decision. Santos met the Admiral's gaze steadily. Then we'd better make sure we're ready for what comes next. The vote came back unanimous from all 3 colony worlds within 24 hours, not just from the governments, but from the people themselves in planet-wide referendums that saw participation rates exceeding 90%. New Terra, fight. Haven's Rest, fight. Prometheus, fight. The message was clear across every human settlement. They would rather die as free humans than live as council property. Sarah stood in the council chamber for what she knew would be the last time, watching the assembled delegates through different eyes. Where once she had seen the galaxy's representatives, she now saw a collection of species who had grown soft under protection humanity provided. 3 centuries of human blood had purchased their peace, and they had grown so accustomed to safety they had forgotten what real warfare looked like. Ambassador Chen, Velethan skin patterns showed impatience. Has humanity reached a decision regarding the evacuation parameters? Yes, Sarah replied, her voice carrying across the chamber with crystalline clarity. We decline. The chamber erupted in confused chatter. Sarah had expected this reaction. The council had grown so used to human compliance they couldn't immediately process defiance. I believe there's been a translation error. Nethys clicked, her mandibles working furiously. Please clarify your response. No translation error, Sarah said, stepping closer to the podium. The United Earth Assembly has voted unanimously to reject the Council's ultimatum. Our colonies will not be evacuated. Our worlds will not be abandoned. We will defend our people with everything we have. Gordhak rose from his seat, his massive frame bristling with barely controlled aggression. You cannot refuse. The Council has decided. The Council, Sarah interrupted, has decided to sacrifice human lives for alien comfort. We find this decision unacceptable. Velethan's skin cycled through rapid warning patterns. Ambassador, you must understand the consequences of this position. Without Council support, humanity cannot hope to survive the Devourer incursion. Your refusal condemns your species to extinction. Sarah allowed herself a cold smile. Perhaps, but it will be extinction on our terms, fighting for our children instead of abandoning them. We've decided that's preferable to whatever passes for life under the Council's protection. The chamber fell silent as the implication sank in. For 3 centuries, humanity had been the Council's solution to every military crisis. Now that solution was walking away, leaving the galaxy's most powerful alliance to face its greatest threat without their enforcers. This is madness, whispered Elder Tessarian of the Contemplative Orders. Humans, you are emotional creatures, but surely you can see reason. Individual worlds cannot stand against the Devourers. Only united action. United action, Sarah cut him off, would involve the Council actually fighting alongside us instead of using us as expendable shields. When has the Council ever placed their own worlds in the path of danger? When have alien soldiers died to protect human colonies? No one answered, because they all knew the truth. Human worlds had served as buffers, human fleets as shock troops, human lives as acceptable losses in conflicts where Council species were kept safely behind the lines. If you refuse evacuation, Gordhak growled, the Council cannot provide protection. Our defense perimeters will be drawn around member worlds only. Humanity will be expelled from all security arrangements. Then expel us, Sarah said simply. We've been doing your fighting for 300 years. Time to see how well you manage without us. She turned to leave, but Velethan's voice stopped her. Wait! The primed skin had shifted to patterns Sarah had never seen before, something that might have been fear mixed with calculation. Perhaps arrangements could be reconsidered. Emergency measures might allow for modified evacuation timelines, additional resources. No. Sarah faced the chamber one last time. You had 3 centuries to treat us as equals. 3 centuries to offer partnership instead of servitude. You chose to see us as weapons instead of allies. Now you can face the consequences of that choice. She walked out of the chamber to the sound of panicked deliberation behind her, delegates shouting over each other as they try to process a universe where their primary military asset had just declared independence. Back on Earth, the real work had already begun. In orbital shipyards from Mercury to Neptune, human engineers worked around the clock retrofitting vessels with technologies the Council had banned as too dangerous for civilized warfare. Quantum mines that could collapse local space-time. AI viruses designed to corrupt machine intelligence networks. Nanoplague weapons that converted matter into gray goo. General Webb stood in the command center of the Olympus station, watching deployment schedules flow across holographic displays. Status report. First wave deployments are ahead of schedule, reported Colonel Reynolds. The experimental weapons packages are being installed on our forward colonies now. If the Devourers follow their predicted timeline, we'll have 6 months to complete preparations. What about Council response? Trade embargo went into effect 4 hours ago. All Council technologies, materials, and support services have been withdrawn. We're officially persona non grata across the galaxy. Webb nodded grimly. Expected. What about intelligence gathering? That's where it gets interesting. Reynolds pulled up a series of intercepts. Council communications are frantic. They're not just worried about the Devourers. They're terrified of facing them without us. The data stream showed Council fleet movements, defensive preparations, and increasingly desperate diplomatic overtures to species that had never shown military capability. The galaxy's most powerful alliance was discovering what humanity had always known. When the shooting started, political authority meant nothing without the will and ability to fight. Any word from our colonies? Governor Liu reports New Terra's defenses are ahead of schedule. They've converted their asteroid mining platforms into weapon stations and installed quantum resonance bombs in the planet's core. If the Devourers want New Terra, they'll have to pay for every meter. Webb smiled coldly. And the others? Haven's Rest is turning itself into a fortress. Underground cities, orbital defense platforms, even weaponized weather control systems. Governor Brooks says they're prepared to make the planet uninhabitable before they let the machines have it. Prometheus? Mining world advantages. They've hollowed out the entire moon and filled it with explosives. If the Devourers try to consume the system, they'll trigger a chain reaction that'll take out everything in a 10-light-year radius. Webb studied the tactical displays, seeing the galaxy as it truly was for the first time. The Council worlds clustered together in the galactic core, protected by layers of buffer systems and defensive arrangements. The frontier world scattered along the spiral arms, isolated and vulnerable, and humanity's colonies, positioned at the intersection of major trade routes and strategic choke points, locations the Council had insisted upon to maximize their usefulness as shields and enforcers. Perfect positions for what was coming. Send a message to all colony worlds. Webb ordered. Operation Prometheus is authorized. If the Council wants to use us as sacrificial lambs, we'll show them what lambs with fangs can accomplish. The Devourers emerged from a void nebula 3 months ahead of schedule, their massive forms blotting out stars as they began their inexorable advance toward the galaxy's inhabited systems. From the deep space monitoring stations of the Council's early warning network, the first reports painted a picture of technological horror that exceeded the worst projections. The machines had evolved during their 2-millennium dormancy, where the historical records showed crude but effective consumption vessels. The new Devourers displayed elegance and efficiency that spoke of advanced artificial intelligence. Their hulls shifted and flowed like living metal, adapting their configurations for optimal resource extraction. Their weapons carved through space itself, leaving wounds in reality that took hours to heal. In the Council chambers, panic had replaced the arrogant certainty of 3 months earlier. Emergency sessions ran continuously as representatives struggled to coordinate defenses without their primary military asset. The carefully crafted defensive perimeters, designed around the assumption of human enforcement, proved woefully inadequate when faced with species who had no experience with large-scale warfare. The Altarian Fourth Fleet has been completely consumed, reported Admiral Kyth of the Corvani military. His massive frame showed stress patterns that spoke of a warrior facing impossible odds. The Devourers didn't just destroy the ships. They converted them. We're not just fighting an invasion force anymore. We're fighting our own weapons turned against us. Velethin's skin had shifted a pattern Sarah would have recognized as barely controlled terror. Well, the second defense line. Collapsing, the Vrex tried to make a stand at Beta Oriones. The Devourers consumed their entire battle group in 17 minutes. They're adapting to our tactics faster than we can deploy them. The chamber's holographic displays showed the machine's relentless advance, a tide of gray spreading across the galaxy's spiral arm. Each system they consumed added to their strength. Every ship they converted became a weapon turned against its former allies. The mathematical progression was inexorable. Within 6 months, the Devourers would reach the galactic core, unless they could be stopped at the sacrifice worlds. "What news from human colonies?" asked Elder Thessarian, his contemplative species' usual serenity replaced by barely hidden desperation. Gorthak's report carried a note of grudging respect. Long-range sensors show massive defensive preparations. They've militarized their entire systems. Asteroid mining platforms converted to weapon stations. Planetary surfaces covered in shield generators and gun emplacements. They appear to be preparing for extended siege warfare. Suicide, Nethys clicked dismissively. No single species can stand against the Devourers. History proves this. But even as she spoke, the first reports were coming in from New Terra. The Devourer advanced fleet hit the colony world's outer defenses like a tsunami meeting a seawall. For the first time in 3 months, their unstoppable progress faltered. The asteroid weapons platforms didn't just fire conventional weapons. They unleashed technologies the Council had banned as too dangerous for civilized warfare. Quantum mines collapsed local space-time around Devourer vessels, trapping them in recursive dimensional loops where cause and effect became meaningless. AI viruses, originally designed by human programmers to counter electronic warfare, began corrupting the machine's collective intelligence networks. The Devourer's perfect coordination started showing gaps, hesitations, errors that grew exponentially as the viral code spread through their ranks. But the humans' most devastating weapon was something the Council had never anticipated: their willingness to sacrifice everything. Governor Liu's final transmission, reported the Council's intelligence coordinator, his voice hollow with shock. New Terra's core is destabilizing. He's triggered a quantum cascade that will turn the entire planet into a weapon. The holographic displays showed the colony world's death throes in real time. The planet's surface cracked open like an egg, revealing the quantum resonance bombs placed in its molten core. But instead of a simple nuclear explosion, the devices created something far more destructive: a controlled collapse of local reality that turned matter itself into a weapon against the machines. The Devourer fleet surrounding New Terra simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not scattered, erased from reality as the quantum cascade rewrote the fundamental laws of physics in an expanding sphere around a dying world. 40 million human lives, along with an estimated 3 billion Devourer constructs, vanished in a flash of impossible light. And then the cascade stopped, contained by failsafes the humans had built into their doomsday weapon. They had sacrificed their world not for random destruction, but for precise military effect. The Council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't just died fighting, they had won. For the first time in 2 millennia, the Devourers had been stopped, their advanced fleet utterly annihilated by a species the Council had dismissed as useful barbarians. Haven's Rest is reporting similar preparations. Gorthak said quietly, "They've turned their entire system into a fortress. If the Devourers want it, they'll pay the same price they paid for New Terra." But the real shock came 12 hours later, when long-range sensors detected something impossible. The main Devourer force had changed course. Instead of continuing their inexorable advance toward the galactic core, They were converging on the human colonies with what could only be described as focused intent. The machines had recognized the threat. They're learning, Dr. Vasquez transmitted from her research station on Earth. Her analysis of the Devourer course corrections painted a picture that should have been impossible. The collective intelligence is adapting to human tactics, treating our colonies as priority targets. They've abandoned their systematic consumption pattern to focus on eliminating what they perceive as the greatest danger. President Santos watched the tactical displays from the command bunker beneath Geneva, surrounded by the leaders who had chosen to stay with Earth rather than evacuate to the outer colonies. Are you saying they're afraid of us? Not afraid. Admiral Tanaka corrected from her position with the defense fleets. Respectful, they recognize humans as the only species in the galaxy that poses a genuine threat to their expansion. They're concentrating their forces to eliminate us before we can develop more effective countermeasures. The irony was not lost on anyone in the command center. The Council had spent 3 centuries treating humanity as too dangerous to trust fully. Now the galaxy's greatest threat was proving them right, but for the wrong reasons. The Devourers feared human innovation, human adaptability, human willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. They feared the very qualities that had made humanity the Council's perfect enforcers. Prometheus reports ready came Governor Harrison's transmission from a mining world. We've turned the entire system into a trap. When the machines arrive, they'll find a present we've been preparing for 3 months. Santos nodded, then opened a channel to the council chambers. The time for political niceties had passed. Humanity was about to show the galaxy what happened when you push the wrong species too far. This is President Santos of the United Earth Assembly. Her voice carried across the quantum channels to every council world. You wanted us to sacrifice our people for your protection. You're about to see exactly what that sacrifice looks like. And when this is over, the galaxy will remember who bled to save it. The Council's response was silence, because they all understood the truth. They had created their own salvation by casting aside. Humanity's exile had freed them to use weapons and tactics too dangerous for civilized warfare. The galaxy's guard dogs had slipped their leash, and they were about to remind everyone why they had been leashed in the first place. The Battle of Prometheus lasted 72 hours and redefined warfare for every species in the galaxy. When the Devourer Armada arrived at the mining world, they found a system that had been transformed into the largest weapon ever conceived by organic intelligence. Governor Harrison's final transmission to Earth was brief, for humanity and for everyone who will never thank us for this. Then Prometheus exploded, not the planet, the entire star system. The mining world's inhabitants had spent 3 months hollowing out asteroids, moons, and even the system's gas giant, filling every available space with exotic matter bombs, antimatter charges, and quantum destabilization devices. When the Devourers attempted to consume the system's resources, they triggered a cascade reaction that turned 14 billion tons of matter into pure energy. The explosion was visible from 3 sectors away. The Devourer Armada, estimated at over 10,000 vessels, vanished in a ball of plasma that briefly outshone the system's star. But the humans' final gift to the galaxy wasn't just destruction. Hidden within the explosion's quantum signature were AI viruses so sophisticated they had been growing and evolving during the 3-month preparation period. The viruses spread to the Devourer collective consciousness like wildfire through dry grass. For the first time in their existence, the machines experienced something analogous to fear as their own intelligence networks turned against them. Command structures collapsed, coordination algorithms failed, and the perfect unity that had made them unstoppable began fragmenting into competing subroutines. In the council chambers, the assembled representatives watched real-time intelligence feeds showing the impossible. The Devourer advance had not just stopped, it was retreating. The machines were pulling back toward the Void Nebula, their formation ragged and uncoordinated as they struggled to purge the viral contamination from their systems. How is this possible? Velathan skin patterns showed a confusion, so deep they had no translation. No single species has ever defeated the Devourers. No civilized species, corrected General Webb, his transmission reaching the Council from Earth's Defense Command. You spent 300 years making sure we stayed civilized, keeping us on a leash because you were afraid of what we might do if you let us off it. Congratulations, you just seen what happens when humanity fights without restrictions. The tactical displays told the story in stark detail. Haven's Rest had held for 18 hours against the second Devourer assault wave, its defenders turning the planet's weather control systems into weapons that filled the atmosphere with corrosive nanites. When the world finally fell, it took 12 billion machines with it. The survivors of New Terra, Prometheus, and Haven's Rest had been evacuated not to safety, but to other human worlds where their experience became the foundation for new defensive strategies. Earth itself had become an armed camp. Every asteroid in the Sol system had been weaponized. Every space station converted to a fortress. The moon's far side bristled with particle accelerators capable of punching holes through space-time itself. Mars hosted manufacturing facilities producing weapons that violated every known law of civilized warfare. But the real revelation came when long-range sensors detected the impossible. Human ships moving to engage the retreating Devourer forces. Admiral Tanaka, President Santos requested a status report from the pursuing fleet. Third Fleet is maintaining contact with the Devourer rear guard. Came the crisp reply, "We're not letting them retreat in good order. Every system they consumed, every resource they stole, we're making them pay for on the way out." The pursuing human vessels were unlike anything in the galactic catalog. Built in secret during the 3 months of preparation, they incorporated technologies that made Council representatives physically recoil from the displays. Ships that could phase in and out of normal space-time, weapons that converted matter directly into destructive energy, defensive systems that created localized reality distortions. The Devourers had awakened humanity's talent for innovation, and that innovation had produced tools of war that transcended the boundaries between science and impossibility. The viral infection is spreading faster than anticipated. Dr. Vasquez reported from her analysis station. The Devourer collective consciousness is fragmenting into isolated nodes. They're losing the unified intelligence that made them unstoppable. But the most significant development was happening in the political sphere. As word of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy, species that had remained neutral in the Council's conflicts began reaching out to human representatives, not through official diplomatic channels, but through back-channel communications between military leaders who understood what they had witnessed. The Centauri Republic offered manufacturing support. The Vegan Alliance requested human military advisors. Even the isolationist Andromedan enclaves sent messages of respect for humanity's sacrifice. These were not Council members seeking another useful tool. They were independent civilizations recognizing a powerful ally. Sarah Chun, still technically ambassador to the Galactic Council despite humanity's expulsion, found herself in an unprecedented position. Council representatives who had dismissed her people as useful barbarians now sought private meetings, offering everything from full membership to preferential trade agreements if humanity would resume their role as galactic enforcers. "The offer is generous," Velatin admitted during one such meeting, his skin patterns showing desperate negotiation colors. Full Council membership, voting rights, representation on all major committees. Humanity would be recognized as an equal partner in galactic governance. Sarah listened patiently, then asked a question that cut to the heart of the matter. "Where was this offer 3 months ago, when you demanded we sacrifice our worlds for your protection?" The silence that followed spoke volumes. The Council's generosity was born of fear, not respect. They had learned that humanity unleashed was more dangerous than humanity constrained, but they still didn't understand the fundamental truth. Respect could not be negotiated, only earned. "We'll consider your proposal," Sarah said finally, "but understand that humanity's relationship with the galaxy has changed. We're no longer your servants or your guard dogs. If we choose to work with the Council again, it will be as equals, not subordinates." The final chapter of the crisis came 6 months later, when the last Devourer forces disappeared into the Void Nebula, their collective consciousness so damaged by human viral weapons that they had effectively ceased to function as a unified threat. Intelligence reports suggested the machines had fractured into competing sub-intelligences, each focused on survival rather than expansion. The galaxy was safe, but the cost had been measured in human blood and sacrifice. President Santos stood before the memorial wall in Geneva, with the names of every person lost in the defense of humanity scrolled in endless columns of light. 40 million from New Terra, 18 million from Haven's Rest, 2 million from Prometheus, countless more from the fleets that had pursued the retreating machines across 3 sectors of space. But alongside the names of the dead were messages from across the galaxy, species that had never acknowledged human sacrifice, now sending tributes to the people who had saved them all. The Altarians composed light songs in honor of New Terra's final stand. The Corvani forged memorial weapons that would never be used, symbols of respect for warriors who had fought without hope of survival. Even the Council had changed. The arrogant certainty that had characterized their rule for millennia had been replaced by something resembling humility. They still governed the galaxy's core worlds, but their absolute authority had been shattered by the simple fact that they had needed humanity to save them. Madam President, Admiral Tanaka approached with a quantum-encrypted message pad. Priority transmission from the Outer Rim territories. Santos read the message and smiled, the first genuine smile she had worn in months. 3 more species had formally requested human military advisors, not to serve as enforcers, but as partners in mutual defense agreements. The galaxy was learning that strength shared was stronger than strength hoarded. What's the status of our reconstruction efforts? Santos asked. New Terra's replacement colony is ahead of schedule. The volunteers from across human space have exceeded all projections. It seems everyone wants to help rebuild what we lost. Santos nodded, understanding the deeper meaning. Humanity had proven something to itself during the crisis, that they could face annihilation and still choose to protect others. The Council had seen them as guard dogs, but they had chosen to be guardians. The irony was perfect. The galaxy had tried to keep humanity contained because they feared what unleashed humans might do. When the real threat emerged, only unleashed humans had possessed the will and capability to stop it. The Council's fear had created their salvation. In the end, the galaxy learned what humanity had always known. Freedom was not a gift to be granted by others, but a right to be claimed by those strong enough to defend it. And when the next crisis came, because there would always be another crisis, they would face it not as servants answering their master's call, but as equals standing beside their allies. The age of human servitude was over. The age of human partnership had begun, and the galaxy would be stronger for it.